she made one mistake and coach pulled her out. You see her on the bench and you're in the bleachers, frustrated for her, but also with the coach. What do you even do? This is one of the most common things that I hear from athletes, from parents. Like, what do you do when you have a coach who just pulls you after one mistake? Because it's really hard to prove yourself if that's what's happening, and potentially you won't get another opportunity. So I hear that frustration from athletes that I work with. I hear it from parents as well. And really two instincts kick in as a parent. First, it's like we're a little frustrated with the coach and their decision to do that. And then we start to dive into these thoughts of, well, they leave this person in, but they pull my daughter out and it feels unfair. And we can go down that rabbit hole pretty far, right? And then also with your daughter, like she's potentially frustrated or embarrassed, not knowing what to do. So we want to know how to navigate it with her too. And today we're going to be talking about both those things and what actually helps. Now, if you're in this situation right now, know that I do understand it's frustrating. And I'm also going to speak from my experience as a coach. I've been a head coach for 14 years. So I get to work with athletes directly. And I'm in this situation as a coach where I make decisions around playing time and if an athlete should stay in. So I'm going to give you a little insight into decisions that I have made as a coach when it comes to this. And sometimes I think that helps shed some light on what's going on, okay, for better or for worse, right? But I also think that just, across the board, one thing that we want to avoid doing in this situation as parents is to vent about it with our daughters, okay? Because I think that the pull to vent and talk about why the coach made bad decisions and why this isn't unfair and why this player got to stay in and that player, all of that. Again, we can go pretty deep into that and it can feel like bonding when we do that with our kids. But what it does is it signals a really valuable lesson to our kids that when we're in situations that we're not happy with or we don't like, we just complain about it. We complain and we blame and we become victims of it. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore your daughter's frustration. I'll talk about kind of a framework on how you can help her with this, but we really need to ground ourselves as parents when they're in this situation. Realize that it's okay for you to be frustrated with the coach or have questions about it, but what's not okay is for you to influence your daughter's perception of her coach, because again, ultimately we need to have a good relationship there. And we're talking specifically about this one thing, getting pulled directly after a mistake, not all the other things that you might be thinking about your daughter's coach, okay? And so we don't want to jeopardize or damage her relationship with her coach. And it absolutely will be if you badmouth that coach and, just complain and vent with your daughter about it. So right off the bat, I just want to make that clear. Let's make sure that as an adult in this situation, that we're always teaching our kids how to navigate. And again, doesn't mean you can't be frustrated, that she can't be frustrated, but what we do with that frustration is really important. So I would highly encourage you to not go down that path with your daughter. You can talk about it with your partner, like all that. But with your daughter, you need to, as much as possible, remain neutral and curious so that you can help her get to a place of problem solving and a path forward. Okay, so that's kind of not what not to do. Let's talk about what to do. So say the situation has happened and you can tell that your daughter's going to get in the car and she's potentially going to be upset about all this. A couple of main things that I want you to emphasize with her, and this doesn't happen just post this event, right? It happens throughout the daily interactions with her, and that is that her performance is not tied to her worth. One of the reasons why this really messes with athletes' confidence is that they tend to think that their performance is tied to how they need to feel about themselves and how other people feel about them. Their identity is tied a lot to their outcome and their performance as a player. And the mindset shift that she needs is to separate who she is from what she does as an athlete, but also in that situation that, hey, you know what? Mistakes are going to happen. And because you got pulled doesn't mean that you're any less of an athlete, that you don't belong on that team. Like, our kids' brains go to a lot of different places when this happens. And so, excuse me, you want to, as much as possible, be emphasizing that. And one of the things that you can do just in day to day, we talk about this a lot actually on our free training for sports parents, is to emphasize her qualities and who she is outside of her sport. So, what else is she good at? Who is she as a person? All of those things are going to strengthen her confidence so that little things like this, and I know it feels like a big thing in her world, but things like this don't rock her confidence and self-image because she's like, well, yes, that situation happened. I got pulled after a mistake and, all of her feelings about it, but it's not rocking her to her core where she's like, oh my gosh, I'm, my self-worth and self-image is being impacted by this. So we call those her positive innate qualities. How can we make sure that we're emphasizing her positive innate qualities? How can we make sure that we're praising all of the things that are in her control when it comes to her work ethic, her coachability, her ability to be a good teammate, like all of those things we want to make sure that we're emphasizing a lot. Now, I have other ideas for this on our free training for sports parents. So if you haven't checked that out, it's at trainhergame.com. I have scripts for how you can do this, how you can build her confidence in her sport, but also in life. So if you haven't already, go check that out. It's at trainhergame.com. Okay, so we really want to emphasize like her performance is not tied to her worth. Okay, she's in the car with you. You can just kind of feel it out. Like, how is she feeling? I say to moms to like report back what she is saying to you so that you're validating her experience. You're not necessarily agreeing with her, but you are validating like, oh yeah, you got pulled after you did that thing and it felt unfair to you. Tell me more about that. And that can help her process just kind of those things in that moment, so that she feels seen and she can get to a place of problem solving. All right. So that's kind of under main point one around her performance is not tied to her worth. Let's see if we can kind of process with her, so that she can eventually get to a place where we can ask her, like, do you want me to continue to listen, or do you want me to help you come up with solutions around this? Okay. Number two, she needs a skill, not just a speech. You can tell her all day that she is a wonderful person and her worth is not tied to performance and she can just get back into it, practice hard, be a good teammate, all those things. She also needs a skill to be able to come back from mistakes. And so that is exactly why we teach athletes in our program. The very first skill that they learn inside our program, the Elite Mental Game, is something called the Snapback routine. This is a 2-second routine that athletes build for themselves. It's a custom routine where they have it's a 3-step thing: a breath, a reset word at the top of that breath, and then on their exhale, they're doing a reset signal. It helps them get back to the present moment in 2 seconds or less so that when they make a mistake, they're not derailed by it. Because a lot of times coaches are going to see the mistake, but also the reaction, and their confidence around keeping that person in the game after they make some mistakes is really tied to how fast they can bounce back. And so when your athlete can have a skill like this that she's practicing in practice, and so coach is seeing that she, maybe makes a mistake, causes a turnover, whatever, like fumbles, gets a hitting error, but she's resetting. Okay. She's resetting fast. Her body language is good and she's calling for the ball again. She's aggressive. Like, that is signaling to the coach that, hey, I can have confidence to keep her in. Now, one of the things I mentioned that I am a coach, and so sometimes I make decisions like this. And what I tell athletes is that this whole thing is kind of like a traffic light. Okay. So green is flow state. I talk about this more in depth in our training as well, but flow state is where we want athletes to be when they're playing their best. So they're really not thinking too much. They're playing well. And yellow is something happens. So that might be a mistake, or a ref makes a bad call, or all the things that could happen in a game. And we need athletes to be able to recognize when they get to yellow and then come back down to green quickly. And not all athletes have that skill unless they've learned something like the snapback routine. Okay. And then red is they are spiraling. They are dysregulated. They're, like wheels are falling off. This is typically, like, as a coach, if I see an athlete is in red, okay, so they're going from green to red, they didn't do a snapback routine, they're not back down, like they're making silly errors, they're making multiple errors in a row, I don't really have any other choice but to pull them out of the game. And I try to pull them out and like talk to them, give them a break, talk to them about what I'm seeing. No, I don't always have the time to do that. Okay. And your daughter's coach might not either. So she might just get pulled and now she's on the bench and the coach isn't saying anything to her. And whether or not you agree with that, yes, I do believe that best practice would be to talk to the player, have a conversation, help them get their head back in the game. But that's not always possible in a game. And, I'm just being honest, like this will happen to your athlete. And I don't think it's our responsibility to put all of the blame on the coach for that. We need to empower athletes with skills to respond in that moment. But also, if we can equip them with a snapback routine ahead of this, then they're more likely to be able to stay in the game, to be able to respond, to be able to like actually play through something without causing a spiral. Now, some of you might be thinking like, my daughter's coach pulls her out and doesn't even give her a chance to respond. Okay. And that might be true too. We also talk about what can you control. Your daughter cannot control the decisions of the coach. And when she places her blame and her emphasis and her attention on that, then she is wasting her energy. All she can do is develop the snapback routine so that she's demonstrating this in practice. She is, after an error, being aggressive again, having her chin up, having good body control. Like, that's all she can do. When she gets pulled out, she is, being an active participant on the bench. She's ready to go. She's being coachable. Like, all of that she can control. She can't control what decision the coach actually makes, okay? And so that is what she has to do. But the more that she can demonstrate, like, I make a mistake and afterwards I'm doing my reset routine or my snapback routine and my face looks like I'm ready to go. My body language looks like I'm ready to go. I'm connecting with my teammates. Like, all of that will signal a different story to the coach, okay? What I mean by that is they're going to have a little bit more confidence in her to maybe have her work through it or keep her in, okay? Now, there are some situations in a game too. Like, I'll give you that perspective as a coach too. There's some situations where we can't afford to have any more errors. And so if there's somebody on the bench who's going to come in and be able to shake things up a little bit or provide a different situation for the other team to look at, depending on the score of the game or who we're playing or, there's so much that goes into it. That might be what plays into the decision as well. So know that there's a lot that goes into decisions like this, even if it doesn't look like it. Okay. So just want to show you a little bit of the other side of the athlete. And like I said, or of the coach perspective. And like I said, I try to make sure I'm connecting with athletes, if not during the game, afterwards, to talk about it and all of that. And maybe your daughter's coach doesn't do that, but you can't do anything about that. Okay. Now, if you do feel like a conversation is warranted, I work with athletes and parents inside our program who are like, I do want to have a conversation with the coach about this and how I can get more playing time and, all of that. Then, you can empower your athlete to have a conversation with their coach, but I would be very specific about what they need. Okay. Only make it about your daughter. And I would encourage your daughter, depending on her age, to do this herself. Okay, if she's in high school, this conversation likely should happen on her own with the coach, or, with what I mean by that is like, you aren't the one initiating the conversation. She wants to bring another teammate to kind of be there as a third party, or like a coach hopefully has an assistant that's also there. But, so it's not none of this, well, you always keep her in, but you pull me out comparison. No. Okay. It is, hey coach, can you help me understand when I make one error, why I get pulled out? I wouldn't even say why I get pulled out. I would say, how can I demonstrate to you that even after one error, I'm ready to go? Something like that. Or, hey coach, I'm noticing that when I get pulled out of the game, it's usually after one error. What can I show you to show you that you can still count on me after that error? Something like that. Okay. So if a conversation needs to be had, but my last kind of emphasis, my point of emphasis I want to make, and I know I've been all over the place a little bit, but is, you can't overemphasize or overhelp her controlling what's in her control. Her body language, her attitude on the bench, her cheering her teammates, staying engaged. Like, the coach really is always watching. And when I look down the bench and I'm like, okay, who am I going to put in? The athlete that's engaged and ready to go instead of pouting on the bench is always the one that I will choose. So make sure that you are equipping her with that knowledge of, like, you can't control everything that the coach does, but you can control your response. And giving her a snapback routine, like I said, is a very tangible skill to do that. If you want to learn how your daughter can get that skill so that she can develop her own snapback routine, that's what I go into detail in our free training. So again, trainhergame.com. You'll learn a few skills that mentally strong athletes have and need to have in order to be confident, mentally strong in their sport, and in life. Because a lot of times, and maybe you've heard this from your daughter's coach, he'll or she'll say something like, your daughter has a skill, but she just needs to be more confident. Or she's talented, but she needs to work on her mental game. Or I need her to be more mentally tough. I need her to come back faster. I need to be able to count on her. And you're like, well, can you teach that skill? Most coaches are not trained in how to teach it. They're not trained in sports psychology to know how to teach those skills. I know I wasn't. I had to go back and use my own time, money, and resources to be certified to teach these to my athletes. And so if you want to, don't leave it to your daughter's coach to do this, because they probably won't. It's not because they don't care, right? It's because there's limited time. They're trained in what they're good at, which is the physical side of the game. So make sure that she has these skills on the mental side so that she can navigate this and she can have skills to come back faster, because that is something that separates athletes. So again, trainhergame.com is where you can learn all of that. All right, parents, I will see you in the next episode of the Raising Elite Competitors podcast.